Hi, Year 7. So we're looking here today at inclined planes. And if you've been working your way through the other videos, you'll find that this one for the Eureka is the first one. Okay, we put them a little bit out of order. And I'm going to show you that first, just to give us a bit of a review about machines and also talk about inclined planes.
Eureka! The story begins with the inclined plane. You haven't really got enough force to lift that barrel, have you? How much force do you need to lift it? Well, how much does it weigh? So you'll need at least 800 newtons of force to lift it into the back of the truck. How far is that? About 1 meter? How many joules of energy will it take? Well, figure it out. Energy is the ability to do work. Work equals force times distance. 800 newton meters of work, or 800 joules of work, which is the same as 800 joules of energy. But you still can't lift the barrel. There's something wrong somewhere. Perhaps it's because you have to exert your energy all at once. If only you could load the barrel onto the truck a little bit at a time. If you could slice it into 4. Then you'd have 4 200 newton slices of barrel. And you'd only need 200 newtons of force to lift each one. That's easy, isn't it? You're using your energy more effectively now. You're spacing it out over a longer time. But you don't get anything for nothing. Although your force is cut down to a quarter of what you need to lift the complete barrel, each time you lift a quarter of the barrel, you exert that force through 1 meter. Which means that you lift the 4 quarter barrels through a total distance of 4 meters. What you're winning on the force, you're losing on the distance. It's a sort of trade-off. The greater the distance, the less force you need to exert. Very neat. But you can't go around breaking things into pieces just because they're too heavy to lift. If only you had a machine that would allow you to trade increased distance for decreased effort or force. Here's your machine. Yes, I know it's just a plank, but it's also a machine. Try and get the barrel into the back of the truck now, and you'll see why. Magic, isn't it? No, it isn't. It's exactly the same trade-off you got when you split the barrel into 4. The plank is 4 meters long. Instead of moving the barrel 1 meter by lifting it straight up, you're moving it 4 meters by pushing it along the plank. You only need to push it with about a quarter as much force, with only about 200 newtons instead of 800 newtons. But since moving 200 newtons through 4 meters is the same as moving 800 newtons through 1 meter, it will still take roughly the same amount of energy to move the barrel by either method. That's why we can call the plank a machine. It doesn't reduce the energy you need to do something, but it does help you to use your energy more effectively. You think you've just made a new discovery? Think again. How do you suppose they built the pyramids 5,000 years ago? They didn't actually use a plank, of course, but a ramp of earth, which is exactly the same principle. And you use the same principle yourself every time you stand on an escalator. Because the plank, the ramp of earth, and the escalator are all 3 examples of the same type of simple machine. They are all sloping, and they are all flat. So physicists call this variety of machine the sloping flat thing. Well, those aren't the exact words they use. They take the Latin-derived word for sloping, which is inclined, and the Latin-derived word for flat, which is plane, to come up with this phrase. So if you're allergic to elevators, why don't you take the inclined plane?
Okay, so we've talked here about inclined planes, and we're starting here with the most obvious type of inclined plane, and that's a ramp. Okay, so this is going to be on our notes again. And a ramp or an inclined plane increases the distance travelled. You spend a lot more time going up the stairs than you would if you went straight up, but that means you use less force to go up this way. Okay. And of course we can have a smooth ramp, or we can have a stepped ramp, which we call stairs. And both work exactly the same way. Moving on to screws. Okay, and a screw is a type of inclined plane. It's just been put into a circle. It makes it a lot easier to put something in here. Alright, so this screw here is going to hold the piece of wood together and provide a lot of force because it's got all of this ramp here. And the more ramp, or the more curls, the tighter it's going to be, but we have to balance that when we talk about wood, because we need to be able to get it into the wood, whereas if we're working with, say, a metal, we'll bring them much closer together and get a much stronger bond. Archimedes used this principle with his lift. This is a lift here, or an Archimedes lift, and what this does is it draws water out down here, and by using the screw technique, pulls it up and draws it up so that you get water at the end here. A propeller on a boat, on an aeroplane, that sort of thing, is also a type of screw, because here you're moving around, and if you looked at the water as we went back from it, it would be circling round and round and round and round, and that's how that creates a force. Alright, another little video for you. Here we go, we're going to let Eureka talk about the screw.
Eureka!
The story so far. If you divide the force you get out of a machine by the force you put into it, you will discover the mechanical advantage of that machine. But since every machine involves contact between moving surfaces, its mechanical advantage will always be reduced to some extent by the force of friction. There's a lot of friction involved with the inclined plane, but hardly any with the lever. And now, the screw and the wheel. How many different types of simple machine do you think there are? 2. There are only 2 basic machines, the inclined plane and the lever. These are the mother and father of every machine in the world. All the others are merely variations on the same theme. For example, there's a beautiful machine. No, not your car. The road. Yes, the road. A winding mountain road is a machine, too. Well, suppose the road didn't wind. Suppose it went straight up the side of the mountain. This is a much shorter way to the top, isn't it? And yet, it won't do you much good, because the engine of even your magnificent automobile hasn't enough force to lift your car straight up. But suppose we make the road long enough and the slope gentle enough for you to drive up the mountain with ease. What have we done now? Yes, we've made the road into an inclined plane, a simple machine. But that's an expensive way to go up a mountain. It requires an awfully long ramp. What if we wrap the inclined plane round the mountain instead? Now we're back where we started, with a winding mountain road, which is really an inclined plane in disguise. A twisted inclined plane, if you like. There are twisted inclined planes all over the place. This includes every device that has a spiraling, corkscrewing action, and which allows you to trade extra turning distance for reduced force, either to help you lift things or fasten things together. Here is the commonest example of all, the screw, which is, in fact, the very name which physicists give to every type of twisted inclined plane, the screw.
And we'll return back to that video when we get to looking at the wheel in the next topic. Okay, so the next type of inclined plane we want to talk about is a wedge. And we've got a wedge here. This is an axe. It's a double-sided inclined plane. It allows us to, in fact, alter the direction of force. So while we're pushing down, what we're actually creating is a push in 2 directions. And this gives us the opportunity to split things up. Lastly, we've got here is the zip. And the zip is a series of inclined planes. I zoom in here, we can see that we've got an inclined plane here. It's a curved inclined plane, and that's okay. And then we've got a wedge. And these will bring the teeth together and separate them up. Now the little hooks there mean that it holds together after it's been pushed together. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about how we calculate the advantage of the mechanical advantage of the inclined plane. And the easy way to do this, we can look at how much force it would require to lift here versus how much force it requires to pull up here. But an easy way of doing it is to just take the length of the ramp and divide it by the height of the ramp. So we've got our length and our height. Alright, now this is a little thing here. So, for most of the questions you guys are going to get, you will find that we've left them in the same units. But be careful, because teachers like to be a little sneaky here, and they'll quite often give you it in different units. They might say the length is in meters and the height is in centimeters. And if you're not careful, you'll end up having a negative mechanical advantage, or a fraction of a mechanical advantage. Let's have a look at an example. Going to make the length 12 meters, and I'm going to make the height 4 meters. Okay, notice how I'm not really caring how much force it requires to move this block here. Alright, because we're all interested in is determining the mechanical advantage for the moment. So we've got 12 over 4, which hopefully you got to equal 3 as well. Alright, and so with that, we're now done with our mechanical advantage, okay, of inclined planes. Now, I'd like you to again go back to page 3 and put a little summary of how we can quickly find the mechanical advantage of an inclined plane using this formula and as a description. And then if you've got time or you haven't quite finished it off yet, we're going to go on and we're going to have a look at page 12. Okay, so on page 12, now I've got a little timer here. You guys are used to the timers. I'm going to jump through this one in just a sec and finish this off. Okay, so I'll put a little pause in here for you to work on that, and then and here's the answers to the worksheet. And with that, we're finished looking at the inclined plane. So hopefully we now know that the inclined plane allows us to lift an object by increasing the distance we move the object, and that's going to provide us with the mechanical advantage. And thank you so much for listening.